Here's something nobody tells chronic overthinkers. The reason you can't stop thinking isn't because you're anxious. It's because your brain is being chemically rewarded for not stopping. Every loop, every rehearsed scenario, every replayed conversation, your mind is getting a small hit of dopamine just for staying engaged. You're not broken. You're running a system that was designed to never power down. And the psychology behind why is more fascinating than you think. If that just made something click, if you've spent years wondering why you can't do what everyone else seems to do so effortlessly, then stay. Because this goes far deeper than a chemical loop. The reason your brain rewards itself for never stopping has roots that most people never trace back far enough. You're not neurotic. You're not fragile. Your mind is running one of the most sophisticated cognitive systems a human brain can build. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly what built it and why it says something about you that most people completely miss. The world has a neat little label for people like you: overthinker. They toss it around like a diagnosis. Your friends say it, your family says it, maybe even your therapist has used some version of it. And every time, the implication is the same: you're doing something wrong. Your mind is excessive. You need to learn how to turn it off. But here's what that framing misses entirely. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing precisely what it was designed to do, just at a frequency most people never reach. Psychologists call this pattern maladaptive rumination. In plain language, it means your mind loops, circling back to the same thoughts, especially around uncertainty, social situations, and unresolved tension. But the research tells a story that contradicts the label. Studies from Yale and the University of Michigan consistently find that people who ruminate at high levels aren't cognitively weaker. They're significantly stronger at pattern recognition, threat detection, and anticipatory reasoning. Your brain isn't stuck in a loop. It's scanning the environment with a level of precision that most minds simply don't operate at. And there's a reason this system runs so hot, a neurological origin story that goes back much further than most people realize. We'll get there. But first, something about this pattern that reframes everything you've been told about what mental exhaustion actually means. Here's something that might surprise you. A 2013 study published in Psychological Science found that individuals who scored highest on rumination also scored significantly higher on cognitive empathy, the ability to model other people's thoughts and emotions in real time. The same wiring that keeps you awake at night is the wiring that makes you read a room before anyone else speaks. You catch the shift in someone's tone. You feel the unspoken tension between two people across the table. You carry emotional data that most people don't even register. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, and this is the part worth sitting with. Most overthinkers believe their thinking is solving something. It feels productive. The brain is engaged, analyzing, constructing responses, weighing outcomes. But cognitive psychologists have a name for this: the illusion of mental progress. Your mind feels like it's moving toward resolution, but it's actually circling. And here's the chemical hook. Your brain releases small amounts of dopamine during this process, not for reaching an answer, just for thinking. The loop itself is the reward. That's why just stop overthinking is neurologically naive. You're not choosing to loop. Your brain is being chemically incentivized to continue. And here's the part that changes the whole picture: where this loop actually comes from. Let's trace it back. For a significant number of chronic overthinkers, this pattern didn't emerge in adulthood. It was built in childhood, in environments where emotional conditions were unpredictable, where a parent's mood could shift between warmth and withdrawal without warning, where mistakes had disproportionate consequences, where the emotional weather in the house changed by the hour. The developing brain learned something profoundly logical. If you can predict what's coming, you might survive it. If you can rehearse every outcome, you might find the safe one. Think ahead. Anticipate. Never stop scanning. Your prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for planning, analysis, and self-reflection, learned to stay active around the clock. Meanwhile, your default mode network, the system responsible for background processing and internal monologue, never stopped generating dialogue. The result is a mind that's essentially always online, always drafting, always running simulations. Not because you're anxious, because once staying one step ahead was the difference between safety and chaos. But here's what's fascinating. Psychologists distinguish between two types of rumination. The first is reflective rumination, turning inward to understand yourself, process experience, and construct meaning. When balanced, it's a genuine cognitive strength, linked to deeper self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and a richer internal life. The second is brooding rumination, a passive, distressing loop of replaying problems without approaching resolution. This is where the cost shows up, in sleep, in decision paralysis, in relationships that strain under the weight of unspoken interpretations. And let's be honest about something uncomfortable. You probably move between both. A single moment of healthy self-reflection can slide, almost invisibly, into a spiral that eats your evening. And because the thinking feels purposeful, because your brain is genuinely working, the boundary between processing and ruminating is nearly impossible to detect in real time. Most overthinkers cross that line a dozen times a day without realizing it. And this is where the deeper question lives. And the next layer explains something you've probably noticed but never fully understood: why the smartest people in the room often look the most exhausted. Picture this, Saturday afternoon. Your friends are sprawled on a couch, half watching something, laughing at nothing, easy, present, thoughtless in the best possible way. And you're right there with them, physically. But behind your eyes, your mind is quietly running 3 simultaneous tracks, replaying something you said on Tuesday, anticipating how tonight's dinner conversation might go, building a contingency plan for a conflict that has a 2% chance of ever materializing. You might even be smiling, but inside, your brain is burning fuel at a rate no one around you would believe. You're not absent, you're everywhere at once. And the fatigue that creates is invisible to everyone but you. And here's the part that needs to be said with care. For some of you, this pattern goes deeper than personality. It's not a quirk, it's a scar. Some people overthink not because their mind is sharp, but because silence once meant danger. Because stillness was the warning sign that something was about to break. For those people, the constant scanning isn't empowerment. It's a survival mode that never received a stand-down order. The radar runs because shutting it off once came with consequences. So it's worth asking yourself, do you think deeply because it enriches your life, or because stopping feels unsafe? Because one of those is depth. The other is a wound wearing the disguise of a strength. And knowing which one you're living in right now is not a small distinction. It might be the most important one you ever make. Here's what all of this comes down to. Your mind isn't broken. It was built by experience, wired by a past that demanded vigilance. Every late-night spiral, every rehearsed argument, every silent calculation running in the background, that's not evidence of dysfunction. That's a nervous system that became extraordinary at anticipation because once it had to be. You don't think too much. You carry a cognitive architecture that most people's brains never needed to build. And the real problem was never the thinking. It was that nobody ever told your mind it's allowed to stop. The challenge isn't to silence the system. You can't shut down a machine that's been running since childhood with a deep breath and a motivational quote. The challenge is to teach that mind, with the gentleness and patience it was never given, that the environment has changed, that it is finally safe enough to rest. Not to go quiet, not to go numb, just to ease its grip on the wheel and trust that the road ahead is clear. And maybe that's the framework worth carrying with you. There's a difference between a mind that thinks deeply because it chooses to, and a mind that thinks constantly because it once had no choice. Recognizing which one you're running right now is where real change begins. Not silence, not emptiness. Just the quiet, radical freedom of choosing when the engine runs and when it finally gets to rest.